Okay, now I know what you're thinking. What the hell am I reviewing? Well, this review is actually a request from a friend of mine who saw this game lying in my collection and thought it would be funny to see me play it for the channel. But first, you're probably wondering why the hell I own such a game, considering I'm most definitely not the demographic for it. Well, you see, when I was younger, I would often play games with my twin sister, and we would have a ton of fun with Mario Party, Diddy Kong Racing, etc. But basically, if it had a two-player mode, we likely gave it a shot. Now, even though my sister played these games with me, she wasn't really a gamer per se. However, that didn't stop family members from occasionally buying games specifically for my sister in mind. And when it came to selecting these games, they would use her other interest as a reference point to help them out. Now, back in the 90s, teen idols Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen dominated the tween market for girls. Their takeover being quite inconspicuous years earlier with TV-made movies like To Grandmother's House We Go and Double Trouble, Toil and Trouble, although these movies were then followed by the direct-to-video series such as The Adventures of Mary-Kate and Ashley, which had the two posing as detectives trying to solve mysteries, and I use the term solve mysteries very loosely here, since most cases were just the girls mistaking something obvious with something wildly outlandish. Seriously, I think at one point they thought like a vampire was haunting a castle or mansion, and it turned out to be a woman who was just the local beekeeper. Oh, and there were songs in each episode. Cause Agatha Christie be damned, what's mystery without a little music?
I don't hide in the closet when I hear a thunderclap. I dunk my head in water, I sat on Santa's lap. I never bat an eye when I get my measles shot. So when things get real scary, it's a good thing that I've got bravery. I'm loaded with bravery.
Seriously, Nancy Drew did more serious sleuthing than these girls did. Although I will admit their dog's name was quite clever. His name was Clue. I mean, what else would you name a mystery-solving dog? This short-lived series, which only lasted I think about 10 video segments, was then followed by the You're Invited To series, which now had the girls inviting the viewer to a party of sorts, and they sang songs here as well, though at least in this series it kind of made sense since it was a party. Now, to be fairly honest, I don't know how you can watch these things nowadays. I'm pretty sure they've never released these on DVD. I'm not 100% on that, but I'm guessing if you YouTube search them, you'll probably find bits and pieces of them, and let the cringing begin is all I can say. While these series were fading out, the girls were on a show on, I think, ABC called Two of a Kind, which was your standard sitcom fare in which the girls were being raised by their widowed father, and the hilarity that ensues from such a situation. It only lasted one season, and I'm pretty sure I watched it occasionally on Friday nights, but I don't really remember any of it. After that show finished, the girls transitioned back into direct-to-video movies, or I guess direct-to-DVD movies at a certain point in that time period, because it was the awkward transition between VHS and DVD. This began what I like to call the Mary-Kate and Ashley cinematic universe. Because trust me, if Marvel was doing their whole shared universe a decade earlier, you could be damn skippy, someone would have pitched this to a studio. The girls released a string of direct-to-DVD movie releases stretching from 1998 up until 2003. Over 9 films were released in that time, and having a twin sister, you can bet I had to watch all of them at some point. And I mean, it was only fair, my sister would be stuck watching whatever superhero action, corny comedy movie I wanted, so sometimes you had to bite the bullet. To be fair, I can barely remember any of them, though usually the shtick with them was that the girls would often be polar opposites of each other. One would be a neat freak while the other one would be a rebel. One would be interested in classical music while the other would like punk rock, things of that nature. Something in the plot would eventually bring them together, and there would be a pair of guys that the two would inexplicably wind up with by the end. The direct-to-DVD movies were ended with the final nail in the coffin, which was the theatrically released New York Minute in 2004, which was essentially a poor man's rip-off of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and somehow they managed to rope Eugene Levy into it, and even Jared Padalecki in one of his earliest roles. Seriously, I think that's why he stayed on Supernatural for over 10 years. He needed penance for doing such a sin in his acting career. We forgive you, Jared. We forgive you. Regardless, the Olsen twins kind of dropped off the face of the earth after that film. Their studio Dual Star, I think, went out of business, and I think it eventually resurfaced a few years later as a perfume fragrance thing or something or other. And looking at them now, in present day, you'd think that the Olsen twins would be related to the Crypt Keeper, since despite being only 31, they look like they've been drained of their life force. Though today the Olsen twins occasionally get a little bit of recognition, though it's mostly in association with their sister Elizabeth Olsen, whose career has ironically skyrocketed in the past 5 years. She's even made an appearance in one of their earlier videos, and who would have thought she'd be the one with the career years later?
Only one one small, itsy-bitsy thing stood in our way. Can I come with you guys? Lizzie, you just can't come today. Maybe next time, we'll see. Maybe a year from this coming May, or maybe next century. Except that you might be out of place. It's not that we just can't stand your face.
Regardless, though, we now return to the video game at hand. Since the Olsen twins were all over the place in the 90s, it's no surprise that they eventually cropped up in video games. In fact, that previously mentioned Adventures of Mary-Kate and Ashley series, yeah, there were GBA games released on that. They were weird sort of platformer mystery games. I don't know, my sister had those too, but I barely got a chance to play those, and when I did, I didn't know what the hell to do. And so in 2000, Acclaim, yes, video game company Acclaim that made a lot of other good things that I'm showing you on screen now in logo form, released Magical Mystery Mall. And oh boy, it blows. Magical Mystery Mall is hardly a game, and it seems to have been made with a female target audience in mind, yet it treats them like idiots since, you know, there's no way girls could potentially play real video games. I mean, it's completely unheard of. The plot, and yes, there is a plot, involves the sisters visiting their local no-brands mall on a Saturday. Seriously, just take a look at some of these places. Oh yeah, I love shopping at jewelry and sunglasses. And don't even get me started on getting a nice rack of ribs down at BBQ. They eventually come across a jewelry kiosk and they find a heart-shaped necklace, though I don't know why they keep calling it a necklace since I don't see a chain on it.
Oh great, it figures I'd pick out the most expensive necklace here. Hi, we were just admiring this really awesome necklace, but it's probably out of our price range.
Price range? You're the Olsen twins. Well, I mean, present Olsen twins probably couldn't afford that, but 90s Olsen twins were like swimming in cash like Scrooge McDuck in his money bin, so I mean, they sure as hell could have. Anyway, they buy it, though the store owner tells them not to put the two halves together since weird, crazy LSD stuff will happen. Which is kind of ironic since the thing looks fully connected in the earlier shots, so, I don't know. The girls obviously don't listen, and they put the pieces together, or separate them and then put them back together. Again, it's confusing. But eventually this causes the mall to enter limbo, and the girls are now trapped inside. Which is written as being terrible, but isn't that like every teenage girl's fantasy, to be like trapped in the mall? I mean, like no-brainer. The only way out is if the two enter 5 shops that are still somehow active and complete their challenges to find the gems that go inside the bracelet. So it's kind of like Thanos and the Infinity Stones if Thanos had to go around a mall finding all the stones to put in the gauntlet. Avengers Infinity Mall, they could call it. I gotta pitch that to somebody at Marvel. So after this, you're given control of one of the sisters, and you slowly, and I do mean slowly, walk around the store to take part in the challenges. Though seriously, this walk animation is hysterically bad. They kind of like tiptoe very slowly, and then they get into like a full-on slow Baywatch jog. It's very awkward, and I know this isn't exactly a sprawling giant open world map, but it can take a solid 3 minutes to get to the other side. Anyway, once you finally made it into a store, you can take part in that store's challenge. Like I said, there's only 5 stores, and therefore only 5 mini-games. Sorry, but there's no unlocking more stores with more challenges, which you'd think would have been the easiest thing to extend the game's length, but whatever. The first minigame is called Fash. Just sounds weird, but it's basically where you have to put on a fashion show. You select outfits for the girls, and you take pictures of them when they go onto the runway. And I'm glad I'm showing you footage of this because saying this out loud, out of context, sounds very, very disturbing. The goal here is basically to score the most points with the outfits and the style of the picture you took, but the game doesn't make it entirely clear how you're scored. I seriously think you can put any outfit together, since all that really matters is that the picture is clear, the girl's in frame, and she's looking straight ahead. Though, good luck taking a good shot, because you're given a crazy amount of predetermined camera angles that suck. Seriously, Resident Evil 1's predetermined camera angles were better than this. And you can't even zoom in and out with this camera, which just seems counterintuitive to any type of picture-taking minigame in any video game. And that's basically it for this one. It's essentially dress up and then you take pictures, which you can't even save, so what's the point? At least have a feature to save the outfit you made. Not really much of a game going on here, but moving on. The next minigame is called Catch a Wave, which takes place outside with people in seemingly the real world, despite the fact that I thought the girls were trapped in the mall. But whatever, maybe that's the whole part of the magical part of the title. In this section, and from that title of the minigame, you'd think that it would be like a surfing minigame, but nope. Instead, Mary-Kate and Ashley have been telling rumors that they've been dating 2 lifeguards. See, I knew Baywatch was going to come back into this at some point. But in reality, it's all BS. So they get the idea to be stalkers and photobomb the 2 boys as they walk around town in order to pretend that they're actually dating them. And I think these 2 lifeguards are based on real guys that won a contest for the game, since in the credits there was like this thing that said walk-in role winners, and it's 2 guys. Anyway, the point of this game is to send one of the girls out to take the photo when the boys are close enough to her. There's 3 sections of this, and the first go is simple, since you'll just have to send the girl out when the boys stop moving and just take the picture. The second time, the guys kind of get wise to what's going on, and they basically have a couple of obstacles in the way to block your shots, but it's pretty manageable. And the final section kind of just gives up on challenge, and the boys eventually realize what's going on, and they allow you to take free shots with them completely unblocked. And that's it for this one. It lasts about 10 minutes, but that's mostly due to the fact that you're given a timer in which how long you are before the scene shifts. You're given about maybe like, I think, 15 to 20 seconds to take a good picture. But this section is ridiculously simple, since the best shot will usually be the one with the girl and the guys all in it together, so you often just take one picture and then just wait out the timer. Boring and simple, moving on. The next minigame is probably one of the most game-like ones. It's called Just Say Snow, and it's basically a snowboard racing minigame. Though again, how we're on a mountain with an entire track to race on, complete with a little village inside of a mall, well, you got me. You have to race an opponent on 3 tracks, and you have to win 2 times on each one. The controls are simplified, though, than any other game you've probably played with a snowboard. You don't accelerate on your own, you just sort of steer and jump. The jumping is awkward, since at times you can stop dead in your tracks. Also, turning can be a bit touch and go, and whatever you do, don't try to jump, get stuck backwards, since the game kind of bugs out and has no idea what the hell you're supposed to do when you try to turn. This minigame can be fun, but it's kind of improperly balanced. You get to pick your board at the beginning with stats, and then you get to choose your opponent from like about 5 with some of the weirdest and dumbest names possible. And some of them are way better than others. As you can tell, their speed is like much higher than your speed was with your board or any of the other people that you can pick from. And they'll smoke you pretty bad. The only way to handle these opponents is to unlock the better boards that have more speed, though unlocking them is random, and I'll explain more on that in a bit. So your best bet here is to pick the slowest opponent, and you'll have no trouble. Though picking the easier opponent kind of feels cheap, and like you took the easy way out. These tracks are also kind of small, and you can't even perform tricks, so it's kind of just a pretty bare-bones game where you just sort of navigate. The snowboarding minigame from Final Fantasy VII was more fun than this. This one kind of has potential, but it comes off as lazy and like no effort went into it. The next minigame is Music Nation. Here you have to select dance moves and then film a music video. After you choose the music and moves, you basically get to edit a music video live. You can change the camera angles and add special effects, and that's pretty much it. Though much like the fashion show minigame, the scoring system here is kind of unexplained. You're graded on the dance, the camera, and the effects, like I said, though it's not exactly clear how you should use these assets to your advantage. You might think that way too many effects might lower the score since it's basically overkill, or that moving the camera around like a nutjob having a seizure will do the same, but nope, apparently the game wants a ton of effects, and the only way to boost up the camera score is to move it around like you have a Twitch. Also, the dance moves like the clothes from the fashion show earlier seemingly have no bearing on the score, regardless of what it says on screen, since I picked moves at random and I basically got a perfect score with the dance moves. This one's kind of dull, and the constant trial and error over and over again to see what works will get frustrating after a while, since, trust me, you'll film a video and think it's perfect, but just because you maybe didn't let the camera change fast enough, or you didn't put too many of those weird floaty balls going around, the game basically fails you, and I had to restart this one about 3 times. The final minigame is Lizzie's Lunch, and unless they're planning a crossover with Hilary Duff's Lizzie McGuire, I'm not really interested in what this one has to say. This one's basically a food delivery game similar to Diner Dash, if you've ever played that on the PC, where the girls have to deliver food at a food court. There are 5 stages, and each one gets a little bit more challenging. You start off just dropping off one food item, and then they throw in multiple food items and more customers along with drink orders. It can be fun and frantic, but it's over way too soon. The whole game takes about maybe 10 minutes if you don't screw up, and the game's pretty lenient on time, and it gives you constant bonuses to keep you from failing. It might have one of the sisters dropping off the drink orders, so all you have to do is handle the food. If you handle the food quick enough, eventually the customers will have more patience, so the waiting time is longer. Basically anything that can stop you from failing, the game tries to help out with. This minigame probably functions the best out of the bunch, but it's far too short, and it feels like more could have been done with it. And that's the whole game! Once you get the 5 gems, the mall is saved, all back to normal, and the credits roll. And this takes about an hour. No, seriously, I am not kidding. This game can be beaten within an hour. Now, I know this game is aimed at girls, but seriously, they couldn't put a little bit more effort into this? I mean, what do they think? Girl gamers can't play a game that's more challenging or lasting longer than an hour? Though, to be fair, this game's existence is kind of questionable entirely when you think about it, since, let's put it this way in perspective, if you're a fan of the Olsen twins, you probably liked things like shopping and fashion, and I doubt there were a ton of girls back in the 90s that were interested in those things that also liked playing PlayStation games. There might have been, but I bet that demographic was probably pretty small. So what, is the game meant to cater to girls that have never played a video game before? Because I don't think this is even going to come up on their radar. The only replayability that the game has are the bonus tokens. As you complete all of the mini-games, you'll notice that when you get a gem, it'll also say something like you've obtained a bonus token, and you can use this at the bonus boutique. This store gives you basically 2 reels that you can use to randomly pick up extras for the mini-games, though it's not always clear what you're going to get. For instance, I was getting a snowflake on one of the reels, and I thought that this would make me unlock one of the better snowboards, but instead I got new dance moves. These extras are purely cosmetic. You'll get like new arenas for like the fashion show or the music videos or some sort of like little bonus thing that can help you out in any given minigame, but they're not needed to beat the game, or it would make it even easier, though if these things were required, an easier game would have been shorter, and that would have been even worse in the long run. The presentation is pretty solid for a PS1 title released back in 2000. The models for the girls are decent, and they're not totally pixelated, though I still can't tell which one is which, but that's not really the graphics causing that problem, that's just, I could never tell them apart. They got the girls to even voice themselves, so at least the game's got some authenticity in that area, and also they're really the only ones that talk, though occasionally they can get annoying because when you keep taking pictures or doing things correct in a minigame, they'll repeat the same 5 lines over and over and over again, and there's only so many times I can hear one of them say, "That's a really cute top," before I want to slit my throat. The in-game graphics aren't that bad either. Considering how the game puts a lot of focus on clothes that the girls are wearing, the designs for the outfits come out rather well. Also, the music is kind of catchy with the 90s techno beats. It's nothing too memorable, nothing you'll probably be humming hours later, but it's rather decent compared to the shortcomings found elsewhere, and frankly I was amazed that it didn't sound more generic. Overall, Mary-Kate and Ashley's Magical Mystery Mall comes off as a cheap cash-in on the whole Mary-Kate and Ashley branding train that made its way through the 90s. The game is short on content, and the content that is here isn't really worth your time. 3 of the mini-games essentially have you moving a camera around and just occasionally pressing a button, and the 2 game-like mini-games in their design are simplistic, and they will not provide any real fun in the long run. In fact, I'm kind of embarrassed to even call this thing a game, although not as embarrassed as I am that I have to put this game back on my shelf with my other legit PS1 games. So yeah, that was Mary-Kate and Ashley's Magical Mystery Mall. To the friend that requested this, I hope you got a good laugh at this. I certainly had a fun hour and a half and got a migraine out of it, but hey, this is what I do for the sake of entertainment. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time when hopefully I'm reviewing an actual video game and not some piece of crap.